UFO Buster Radio with your hosts, Manny Moonraker and Big O.
Hey, it's UFO Buster Radio, and I'm Manny Moonraker along with my host.
Big O?
So, Big O, looks like we got some more stuff to talk about. We're going back to the alien UFO topic, should we say?
Yeah. Are you going to say something else?
No, I was just leaving the door open for you.
Okay. Yeah. We're going back to the, aliens, and it's going to be awesome because there's plethora of information, especially new information.
Yeah, and that new information is kind of huge. I mean, it's humongous.
Technically, it's ginormous.
Ginormous. But before we get started on that, I did want to ask you if you had a chance to listen to Dave in the Morning recently.
No, I did not have a chance to listen to Dave in the Morning. I didn't eat my Wheaties, and by the time I was up and going, I didn't. What's going on with that?
Well, Dave in the Morning, and you should listen to Friday's broadcast on Spreaker. He actually has a UFO Buster Radio song that he plays.
Yeah, we have a theme song?
It's a theme song. I told him it's more like an anthem.
Really? Oh, wait, hold on. Hi, Donna. How you doing? I just want to be personal real quick with Donna. I appreciate your voice, Donna. Okay.
Well, listen, if you listen to Friday's show, you're going to see a new side of Donna. She was pretty active on that show.
Really? Okay, yeah.
Totally, dude. Totally.
Okay.
So back to the UFO stuff. Our episode this week, it's going to mingle a lot with recent scientific findings and discussions.
Which in terms leads to possible possible extraterrestrial life, and and we're just trying to seek the truth.
Exactly. We're all about the truth. We're like the no brand, no name X-Files, you might say.
I was thinking more like National Enquirer, but okay, we're good.
We can do that too. So before we go into the ozone and really get down to the nitty-gritty of things, I did want to bring up a topic regarding a star that was recently pretty huge in the news. And it was huge because it was... What?
What did Kim Kardashian do now? Big star. No?
No, I'm not talking about the memories.
Oh, hey. Explicit. All right, continue.
So star KIC 8462852. So apparently in October, there was a story that came out in the news and on the internet that there might be a gigantic artificial structure drifting in front of the star, blocking some of its light. Well, the theory is that if an alien civilization became so advanced and needed so much power to, fuel and power their own civilization, that they would be able to build an alien structure either around or partially cover a star in order to harness its power.
That's pretty far-fetched. I'm not going to lie.
That's interesting, huh?
That's some Star Trek, Star Wars stuff.
So, of course, in a matter of a few days or a week later, someone put out a report saying, hey, that's not true. All it is an asteroid belt that's showing that that's blocking the light from the star, and so therefore it's nothing. It happens all the time.
Obviously.
However, this has been happening since 2011 when the Kepler Space Telescope first saw this happening. And so according to, our science folks, they're saying usually a light emanating from a star will drop about around 1% to like 5%.
Mm-hmm.
But this particular star, it dropped as far down as 15%.
Oh.
And at one time, even 20%.
Ooh.
So the idea is that something pretty humongous, pretty big, it's blocking the star from time to time.
Or draining it, you know. We
Or
saw.
draining it.
If you haven't saw, if you what? Have you not seen Star Wars? It drains that's like the next level Death Star stuff. I'm telling you, it's
Yeah.
draining the power of that star. Like, yeah, that's some crazy stuff.
So, of course, people decided, well, asteroids, that's good. So, unfortunately, for those naysayers that there could be something else, some people still are looking at the star, and they've noticed that it still continues to dim in a fashion that's not normal. We're still going to
You know,
continue looking at it.
the naysayers, are they part of the government? That's another government conspiracy. I'm telling you right now, it's like every time something comes up, and it's like, there's possible aliens, right? On the dark side of the moon, on Mars, on the star. No, not really. Don't worry about that. Look. We have global warming. Worry about that.
Well, and that's the thing, they're always quick to say it's not an extraterrestrial, it's not another civilization. But to be honest, I mean, we're talking about a star that's how many hundreds of light years away? How can we say it's not?
But then again, how can we say it is? It's one of those situations where everything you say, you have to be held accountable, especially in the science community. If you say something stupid, you're forever going to be known as that person who says something stupid. And I kind of understand, but instead of saying no, just look and then probable and keep it stepping.
Well, and you know what? That's exactly what's going to happen when we discuss your topic in the ozone. Because for decades, the science community has been saying there's no way there could be anything else out there. And all of a sudden, they've changed their story.
As always.
As always. So, taking that into consideration, yeah, I think it's possible that there could be something out there that's not just naturally occurring.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I guess we're ready to go into the next segment.
Big O! It's showtime!
So, what's the big topic on the ozone?
Well, the ozone is actually going to talk about recent events that it was not done by somebody, just somebody who's looking up at the stars and found something, or actually pretty big names. And I got this information from CNN. Oh my word. So CNN had a conversation with a gentleman named Mike Brown, I believe. His last name is Mr. Brown. So we're going to call him Mr. Brown from now on. And if you don't know who Mr. Brown is, Mr. Brown is part of the reason why our ninth planet, when you was in high school back in however long ago, 90s, 80s, 70s, you used to think Pluto was a planet. I did, you did, we all did. But Mr. Brown says, looks too small to be a planet. Nope, it's not a planet. Let's drop it down, drop its status. So it became a dwarf planet.
You know what's funny about that? Is that ever since New Horizons went by, did that flyby of Pluto, they actually got some new calculations, and Pluto is much bigger than what they thought it was. And so now there's discussions about bringing it back to planet status.
Just drop it off. Let it go. I mean, poor Pluto. He gets his hopes up, then let it go. Then gets his hopes up, let it go. But interesting news, though, right? So Pluto was discovered in the 1930s. Now, Neptune was discovered after. Now, Neptune's a lot closer to us than Pluto. And through their calculations, because of gravitational pull and blah, 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 right? They figured there was something up. Something's not right. I swear, some of the scientists, I swear, this is how they talk. You know what? That ain't right. So they started doing. Stop that. They started doing connections, and they found Neptune. Well, here, there's another case of that. They're like, you know what? That ain't right. And Mr. Brown was like, you know what? That ain't right. So now, there is a theory that out way past Pluto, furthest possible planet ever, or actually it becomes planet number 9, also nicknamed Planet 9. There's the possibility of a new planet out there that its orbit can take up to 10 to 20,000 years. That's amazing, because it was not through telescopes that we found this planet. It was through math and calculation. That's amazing. We don't even know it's there, but we have a feeling. And now that we have a feeling and we have this general location, because all these scale models and, rocket scientists and scientists saying, that ain't right. We're on the search for it, which is awesome. Because there's no telling what could be on this planet. They can actually be extraterrestrials.
So before we get into the whole extraterrestrial discussion, because I really do want to go there with this.
Okay.
The Planet 9 situation was initially, talked about, and people named it other things, right?
Oh, yes. They called it Planet X. Right? This so-called Planet X. And what was the other name?
Nibiru.
Oh, the Destroyer.
Oh, and there's
Nibiru
one more name. There's one more name, actually.
What?
There were other people now, referring to this as Planet X, Nibiru, or Planet 9, also called it Wormwood.
Wormwood.
Right.
That makes even more sense to me.
Well, Wormwood is the so-called star that's being referred to in the Bible.
Okay.
And so apparently it's a great star that falls from heaven, and it falls to the earth, and we have all this stuff happening.
So basically, religious people took this as an opportunity to do a Bible reference. Say, hey, we're going to call it Wormwood. Ha! Top that. Not with it. Get over it. Look, it's either Planet 9 or Planet Nibiru or Planet X. Let it go. I'm really getting tired of religion wanting to throw in and mix in with science. Just jump in there. Get out. You're messing everything up. Let the truth be known. So, the crazy thing is that the term Planet X and the term, Nibiru was coined in 1995. And do you know by who?
A crazy person.
Actually, I feel that way. Right? Now, this lady, she has a website. And are you going to post a link to the website just for giggles for everybody?
Sure. It'll be on there.
Okay. This lady claims that she is in communication with extraterrestrial beings. And they
not just any extraterrestrials. She's actually in contact with the Greys.
Right. But the form of communication is apparently telepathy, because they speak to her in her head. That Planet Nibiru is going to come through and mix it all up and mess everything up for everybody. It's pretty much going to be the apocalypse of Earth. Done.
Well, I did some research on the reason why she came up with the name Nibiru. So it turns out that Nibiru actually comes from back in the Mesopotamian days.
Say that 3 times.
Yeah. So in the Mesopotamian days, which we're talking about, 5,000 to 3,500 BC, before Christ.
Okay.
So there was a Russian author, and his name was Stitchins, Zachariah Stitchins, and what he did was he kind of worked out a way to translate the Mesopotamian symbolism in what they wrote. And according to them, there was a planet Nibiru which had gods on it. And so the
Okay.
gods actually did some genetic alterations on humans
Okay.
when we were apes.
Oh. Could this be around the same time, that the Catholic Church decided that there were giants because there were angels sleeping with humans?
Oh, you're talking about the Nephilim.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the Nephilim are tied into the story in some way.
You see? Ha! Inkling. Got it.
So the Nephilim, or the gods, or in Sumerian myth, is called the Anunnaki.
That sounds so cool.
So
Hey.
apparently these guys decided to come down to Earth, do their genetic experiments and so forth. And here we are today.
It's
So,
funny. All of these little religions or these different types of religions all have a somewhat similar story. Look at Scientology. Mm-hmm. They're weird, but it's kind of similar.
yeah, they're similar because they're all trying to explain, the stuff we just don't know about.
Right.
So, make a long story short, apparently, your lady friend from the Alien Talk picked up on
Okay.
the Nibiru name.
Right. From the graves.
So, yeah, so Nancy Leiter is her name, and her website is Zeta Talk.
Yes.
And it actually went to the website, and it's still there.
Mm-hmm. It's like another conspiracy. You remember way back when? Y2K. Everybody was going crazy about Y2K. Y2K this, end of the world. Y2K this. It's like a trending thing. It's a trend. It's trendy to be worried. So then it went from Y2K. Of course, the next day everything was fine. Everybody lived out their lives. Oh my God. Everybody who quit their jobs, the year before 2000 had to beg for their jobs back.
Well, what's funny is I really thought that this Nancy's website was probably going to be outdated and there's nothing current on it, but there is.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she actually has photos from 2015 where she's trying to identify for people in the sky images that might give an inkling of to where Nibiru is.
Really? All right, Mr. Brown. It sounds like somebody already knows where Nibiru is, or Planet 9, or X, or Wormwood. They just need to pick one name. Just let it go. Jeez. But, like I was saying...
Yeah. So now the reports from the astrologer that actually found the mathematical evidence, now he's saying that the orbit is how long?
Approximately 10 to 20,000 years.
So now, according to Nancy and Mesopotamians, the orbit should only be 3,600 years.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's still... First of all, she's getting guided. So she's getting help. Okay? She's been touched. Second thing, it's still calculations when it comes to the actual scientists trying to figure it out. They have a theory of how long it takes, but in reality, do they know? No, it's just a mathematical theory. It could be 3,500 years instead of 10,000 years.
Well, see, from what I saw, they actually ran a computer simulation. So, which means I would think that they should be able to run that simulation backwards and forwards and get a good idea of where this particular planet would be.
So everybody who has a telescope that's better than the Walmart brand, look up. We might find something.
And apparently it's pretty far, so it's not like you're gonna, be able to see it in a night sky. anytime soon.
Okay, all the scientists who have the big fancy, telescopes, look up. See, that's all you had to say.
So Planet X. So the reason why they're not calling it Planet X is because we're down to 8 planets.
8 planets, that's right.
Yeah, so Planet X would have been Roman numeral 10.
Correct.
Right. So unfortunately, we're just going to have to settle for Planet 9 unless Pluto gets a bump again.
Well, if Pluto gets a bump again, it will be the official X planet, which would be pretty cool. I mean, the theory of it being, or having some type of life is still strong. I still think, there's possible life on, other things like the moons that's surrounding Jupiter or Saturn or something. Yeah, there could be something in Saturn's rings that we don't know yet. Don't know. We need to find out.
I'm sure there's plenty in our solar system we don't know.
Yeah. I'm about to dork out. I think there's a second Earth or counter Earth. Oh.
Well,
you heard of that before?
Yeah, so that was one of the conspiracy theories when it came to Nibiru, that Nibiru was actually on the opposite side of our orbit.
180 degree. Oh, no. 360, technically. No, 180. So that is a cool theory. Because we don't know. And there have been signs of satellites, having light glimpses of a shiny figure that's really big on the other side of the sun. But it wasn't really looked at. It's just something shining from the sun. Or space debris, UFO.
It kind of makes you wonder, why don't we just, take a satellite, put a lot of current technology in it, and just leave it there. We'll come back to it in a year and see what flew by.
Well, considering that the orbit is not just a linear orbit, it's a helical orbit, I would think that it would be kind of hard to do that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I would think it probably would have been hard 30 years ago, but not anymore. I mean, because number one, it's getting its power from the sun. Number two, the way that our computers work now, it should be able to track its spatial position, relative to the sun and the stars. So it should be able to keep itself in the same place. So I guess we'll see.
And what the hell happened?
I don't know. I was just talking away, and you're not there.
What?
So anyway, I guess with today's technology, it'll be able to keep itself in the same spot using the stars, the sun, and things like that for navigation.
Well, apparently the satellites keeping my phone can't do that shit. How the hell can?
Right. So for everyone listening right now, Big O was disconnected.
Oh my god!
And it might have been the CIA, FBI, or the Anunnaki, Nephilim, one of them.
You know what? It's your fault. You started it with the Clinton thing. The whole UFO Clinton thing, my phone's been acting up ever since. Horrible.
You gotta watch out.
Whatever. Anyway, but, very good informative show, and I appreciated, the information. This was great news. I mean, I think it's something to look forward to. Between the star having a possible structure to a new planet. The possible discovery of a new planet, there has not been a new discovery of a new planet in over about 50 years, 50, 60 years. That's amazing.
Well, hopefully it comes through. Now they're saying that the chances that it's there went from 30 to 40% to 75%.
That's awesome.
So we'll see. So now, the topic of aliens. Could there be aliens on Planet 9?
Okay. So theoretically, the type of alien life forms varies from person to person. Okay. If you're thinking humanoid or, big animal, I'm saying no. Intelligent life, I don't think so. For the reason being, our orbit is in such a unique spot that it is possible for life to flourish. Now, it being so far out there, is it getting enough energy from the sun? I mean, unless they're, extremely smart, and they terraform that planet, and we don't know about, and they're able to sustain heat or warmth or whatever the case may be, they're able to sustain life, then maybe, possibly, hypothetically. But from my understanding of how I would think an extraterrestrial is, my little mind, no.
Well, here's my thing. If you look at a lot of these aliens, and the one that's the most popular is the Graylien, the little grays.
Yeah.
They're like ghost white with humongous eyeballs. To me, that anatomy speaks of very little sun, and they need the big eyeballs to see because it's kind of dark.
Okay, you think adaptation? That's why they look that way.
I think
But
so.
if you really think about it, right? Let's flip that. All right. If you want to think about adaptation, right? This planet 9, is supposed to be 6 times bigger than Earth. That means the mass of this planet and the gravitational pull of this planet is 6 times greater than Earth. If you put a normal human being to go through that on an everyday basis, they will develop problems. They have to be adapted. So the skinny little scrawny little aliens with big heads that you're describing, I don't think we'll be able to survive in a giant planet like that.
Well, just because it's giant, it doesn't really mean that it has that core to create that type of gravity.
That's what she said.
Exactly. Big O. So what I'm saying is, there's listen, these guys are showing up somehow, somewhere. Now, I can say this much. I think that people who say that there's no advanced civilizations out there are crazy. And the same token, I think that people who say that every single sighting it's an alien are crazy also.
Right.
So you got to take a middle road.
Be rational.
Yeah, be rational about it.
I definitely believe that there's, extraterrestrial activity, and I'm more towards, we're not going to see the actual extraterrestrial. We're going to see robots or intelligent AIs that we're going to meet first before being actually introduced in our lifetime or in a couple of lifetimes of an actual extraterrestrial being.
Well,
right?
Well, maybe these UFOs are the AI.
That would be highly plausible for me. I would take that more than seeing an actual humanoid extraterrestrial all day. They'll be like Borg. We'll have to assimilate.
Well, I mean, they have to be coming here for a reason, right? So even if, let's say, 5% of the UFOs that we see are actual, extraterrestrials, then why would they be here?
I mean, if you really think about it, water is a great fuel. Water has hydrogen, which can be used as a fuel. I mean, there's plenty of things on this planet that we don't know can be used as a resource yet, really.
But why wouldn't they stop on Mars? We know there's water there.
It's so much harder to get water from Mars than it is from Earth. Think about it.
They don't have the same
Earth
flavors.
Is like, that too, Not to mention, it's easier to be accessible. Easier, way easier. I mean, the H2O is probably the perfect, level of HNO too. But still, it will be easier for it to just go down, collect the energy, and leave than to try to dig into solid ground and find water, or trying to find water that's frozen. I mean, there's still plenty of areas on Earth that, we don't even see huge radar, blocks. That's how that one plane got lost. There's no telling what happens.
Yeah, somehow I think it's a little bit more sinister.
You see, there you go, making it bad again. How you gonna?
No, I mean, I'm gonna be honest. If I had ships, if I had either interstellar or interdimensional travel and I could just show up whenever I wanted, and I had, like, again, all these apes running around, I'm gonna do what I want with who I want.
See, that is also why I feel that we should always be prepared for no matter what. I ain't saying I'm gonna take these famous words from Cat Williams. I ain't saying nobody could be trusted. I'm saying I ain't trusting nobody.
And you probably shouldn't. And to be honest, if the Greys wanted to give you an anal probe, what could you do about it?
We're gonna roll right through that subject. Not talking about probing.
I'm waiting. Just let it go. Just let it go.
That's what they said. I don't want them to say that to me. No anal probing. I mean, come on, let that go.
I'm just telling you. There's something to it, and everyone can't be nuts. We can't all be just imagining things, especially the people who say they're being abducted and experimented on.
I mean, we're probably like their version of lab rats, you know, and they're probably for people who got these great ideas like the TV. I think the TV is one of the biggest setbacks of mankind. I really do. You know, how many people who will watch TV for hours and hours at a time and not advance because they're watching TV? I am one of them. I could have been smart had I not had a TV.
So officially, what do you think? Is there a Planet 9 or not?
I think so. I think they're too close to knowing that it is there for it to be just a hypothetical thing. I really think that we're gonna, and within the next 2 years, we will know exactly where it's at.
I think so too. I think for sure. I think before the end of this year, they'll let us know that they have a pretty good idea of its location.
Yeah, all day.
So I guess we can play this. What's your stance on the game? So, is there an alien based on Mars?
No, I don't think there was ever any real true signs of alien stationed at Mars.
Okay. Is there an alien based on the dark side of the moon?
No, I don't think so.
So, those are going to be two great topics for future shows because, according to many astronauts employed by NASA, there is stuff on the moon.
Which I think that should be our next topic, is to try to attack that and bring more details to that.
Oh, no, sir. Our next topic is going to be even weirder.
Oh, what's the next topic?
The next topic is the strange sounds that people are reporting all over the world.
Really?
Yes.
What strange sound? I mean, let's not give it away to everybody so that way they can stay tuned to next episode, next topic. But is it like a whisper?
It's not a whisper. I mean, some people are reporting that their doors and windows shake. They actually have recordings of some of these sounds, and apparently it's not tied to airplanes, construction, or anything like that.
That's going to be interesting. All right.
Yeah, we are going to have some of those clips on here, along with some videos of people actually reporting the sounds, even through local media.
Wow. That's going to be awesome.
Yeah, and it's really strange, and it just goes to show you, we really don't know everything. Well, I think that's going to be the end of our show for today, Big O.
Hey, another one bites the dust.
Another one bites the dust. Any last words before we say goodbye?
I'm not going to be like Jerry Springer and break it up in the final thought. I'm going to just let this one go.
Wouldn't it be great if we could have some live fights on our podcast?
And have them screaming, Buster, Buster, Buster. That would be awesome.
So, as Big O was saying, if you want to share some of your experiences with us, please call 972-290-1329 and leave us your UFO sightings or your ghostly experience. We really want to share that with other listeners and maybe even get you on the podcast to share it live.
Yeah, our whole purpose is to find the truth and spread truth. And if we feel what you have is compelling evidence, then let us know, and we'll share it as best as we can.
Well, Big O, I guess this is it. Until next week.
Welcome to UFO Buster Radio with your hosts, Manny Moonraker and Big O.
Manny Moonraker here, and welcome back to another episode of UFO Buster Radio, and I'm here with my co-host,
Big O.
So we got an action-packed, information-filled episode for episode 9. And Big O, we're going to discuss quite a few things.
Yeah, we are. We're going to get down to business. Get back to brass tacks.
So one of the topics we're going to have is some really strange sounds people are hearing in the sky and around them.
That's going to be interesting because, I've looked at some of these videos and it weirded me out, but it reminded me of something. So let's get into that. When we get into our ozone, right, we're going to discuss the astronauts that's been actually out there and all the things they've discovered. So I got some actual information on the website that Manny's going to put up. And so that way, not only you're going to hear my point of view, but you could look it up yourself.
Well, and the best thing about having astronauts, the best thing of having astronauts that discuss things like UFOs, it's not the regular person, is it?
No, it's professionals, scientific professionals who actually, they take things very seriously. What they do is their living, and what they're doing is pursuing and furthering mankind, and they're saying there's something out there.
Well, so for our first topic today, we're going to talk about those weird sounds, and we were able to get some clips from YouTube, no less, that people were recording and posting, and we're going to go ahead and play the first clip just to give everyone an idea of the type of sounds that people are hearing. And here we go. So that sound is pretty freaky, and it sounds something like out of a movie, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. Have you ever heard of the movie War at War? Right? Is that the movie, or is it another movie that Tom Cruise did?
War of the Worlds, the remake.
Yes, the remake of the movie, which is also what we talked about before in one of our first episodes of the fake radio broadcast. It was a remake of that.
So it's interesting that this is happening. So one of the things that we tend to think immediately, being somewhat skeptical, is that it's a fake. It's a hoax.
Obviously, because it's on YouTube. World Star. Why not make something freaky and controversial and put something out there to get your name out there? But that's not the case here, is it?
No, as a matter of fact, when you listen to some of these and you actually see them on YouTube, people are recording this like with their cell phones, and so you hear like the ambient sound, environmental sounds like dogs and birds or whatever, but you also hear that loud noise in the background.
And the coolest thing about this is that it's not just us people in the United States. Believe it or not, we're not alone. People from around the world has been hearing this sound, and it started around the beginning of January, right? For about a week. I think from January 5th to about the 10th, we was hearing this around the world.
So the other thing is, when you say around the world, we're talking about countries like Japan, Hungary, the UK, Canada, the US, and everywhere, Oklahoma, Texas. All of these places are hearing these sounds, and there's no logical explanation for them.
They even try to go and talk to, in the United States. I don't know about what's going on across the pond, but in the United States, they was trying to figure out if they were hearing some type of sonic boom or aircraft. And Air Force, the military, were reporting, that's not us. We have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah. So at least this time, they're not saying they're just dropping dummies out of a hot air balloon.
Exactly. Now, a little while ago in my area, I was hearing sonic booms, or I was hearing a loud noise too. So I was like, oh my God. Could this be related? But in actuality, they was actually doing military testing. And they actually said, yep, that was us. We was doing sonic boom testing. We was going and having aircrafts going at supersonic speeds. And so those sonic booms, don't worry about it, it's all us. So they will admit that they're doing something. But this time, with this particular case right here, they were not admitting to anything. Makes it interesting.
So I'm going to go ahead and start the second clip, and it's a little longer. So let me go ahead and start it and play some of the other clips that we found on YouTube. So it's interesting, Bigo, how a lot of these sounds almost sounds like trumpets or someone dragging a metal table.
It seriously sounds like the movie. I mean, what I'm talking about, almost exactly how I'm thinking this big machine is going to start picking up bodies any second now, and the person just doesn't know. It's so freaky.
Well, one of the YouTubers actually said that there was a statement by NASA saying that a lot of these sounds occur naturally because the Earth has a lot of background noise, and if humans had antennas on their heads instead of ears, they would hear them all the time. I guess the biggest problem with that is we have ears and not antennas.
Really, NASA. So the only way they can explain this now, right, is like, oh yeah, we've been hearing this for years. You just not heard it. But we've been hearing this for years. I mean, come on. All right, due to the swamp gas and the weather and the Coriolis effect and El Nino, we're hearing those sounds audibly through our ears now.
So the other thing that really comes to mind is that across the U.S. and other countries, besides these weird noises, which maybe a lot of people are actually saying that this might be the apocalypse sounds from angels in heaven. But yeah, there's also a lot of like the sonic boom type sounds that you were referring to, and those are happening at random. And again, like you said earlier, it's not being certified as a military test or anything like that. They're just occurring naturally in the atmosphere.
See, now, when Manny brought this to my attention, actually we talked about this about 2 weeks ago. And then he started doing some research. And my first thought was, could it be something in the earth? And you guys are probably thinking, huh? Well, earth needs, in order for sound to be created, earth, it needs a type of medium. That's why there's no sound in space, really. There's only a void. So I was thinking something inside the crust of the turning. I don't know. It could be a subsonic earthquake that is emitting through the earth and going into the air. That's what we're hearing. But after I saw the video, it blew my mind completely.
Yeah, and the best thing is that you have not just the sound recording, but you have the video, and you see the people recording this. And in some of the other videos, which we didn't include in the clips, you have people having conversations about the sound.
Yeah, like, what is this sound? What is going on? And it's not like they focus on one part of the sky. They're looking all over throughout the entire sky and the ground, and there's nothing going on. You will hear, there was one video that you will see a truck, and you can hear and clearly hear the truck go by, and then this loud sound that would, overwhelm the truck's noise, and you're just like, oh my God, that is so cool and scary at the same time.
Well, this is a topic where we're going to probably have to revisit in the future because I'm sure people are going to be reporting more of this, and it seems like it's going to be a hot topic as the year goes through.
I'm telling you, this is making me, it's going to turn me into a prepper. I'm going to get my book bag, my bug out bag. This is, I've never been more edgy since I started working with you, Manny. You're making me paranoid.
Hey, I do the best I can. And
There
if
you
I'm
go.
doing that, I'm doing my job.
Exactly. Just be prepared. We're not saying they're evil. We're just saying you need to be prepared. You never know.
So it looks like the earliest reports of this sound happened back in 2012. And I believe it was like March of 2012 when some of these sounds were first heard by individuals and reported on. And they're actually, if anyone out there wants to do research, you can actually download clips of people calling 911 regarding the sounds as well.
That is so freaky. So now, but NASA thinks because we don't have antennas and just have ears, it's okay. I am telling you, you never know. Be prepared. Prepare yourself. Nothing. Anything can happen.
So what's the chance that this is some kind of futuristic test vehicle?
For it to be so long, technically, I will say slim to none, right? For it to be a test vehicle, NASA will wrap up, or any military will wrap up a test vehicle within 3 to 4 years, especially with today's technology. You're saying that the earliest sounds is from 2012 and it's now 2016 and we're still hearing stuff about it. I would completely rule that out. And not to mention, if it was a test vehicle, it would be very localized. This is happening around the world.
Like I said, stay tuned, folks, because there's more on this to come, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
So before we go into the ozone, I want to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to visit one of our sponsors, bosscrawler.com. It's a job search, career search website, and you should give them a visit and see what they have in store. Great place to find a job. And if you're an employer or a business looking for a cheap way to really post jobs and get applicants, the best place to be.
Cool.
So with that said, I think it's time to go into our next segment.
Big O! It's showtime!
So Big O, what do we have?
In the ozone today, I want to talk about our astronauts. Our astronauts, I think, are extremely brave men, and I always will tip my hat especially to these guys who risk their lives to go out in space and to further our science. Now, I have a list of approximately 13 to 14 astronauts who say there's something out there.
And that's really important because it's not, it's not the regular blue-collar person. It's not the person that's drunk or a person who's high on marijuana at the corner. These are astronauts.
High on marijuana. Awesome. So these are professionals. And when I'm talking about professionals, I'm talking about prior military, have been specially trained. And these guys, they are professionals. They're supposed to observe things and be able to account for detailed information. They have to for the data they are picking up. They have to do this.
And some of them are trained scientists, aren't they?
They are. They have degrees. They have, oh my God, I admire them. I really do. I'm not saying they're my mentors. I'm not saying they're my idols, but I would rather focus on them than Kim Kardashian and Kanye West and whoever the hell is on Pop TV. These guys deserve a lot of credit, okay? These guys, like I said, I love them. I love them to death. They're awesome. They were helping mankind succeed in different levels. Like, let me talk about two astronauts. You ever heard of the X-15?
Yes.
Okay, the X-15 was an experimental plane. Well, I can't even call it a plane because it didn't really have a jet motor. It had a rocket propelled motor, and the goal, this was kind of the main goal, is to reach supersonic speeds and see how far up can we go and how much the human body can take. It has so many scientific, relevance, the X-15, that people just don't really understand. A lot of stuff that we do today was like the pressurized suits and the gravitational suits that people wear, the new Air Force pilots wear now, is due to the X-15 test pilots. Now, with all that being said, astronaut Major Robert White and Joseph A. Walker, they both said there was things out there. According to them, right, and quote, Robert White said, there are things there. There absolutely is. And
so when they're saying there, what are they referring to?
Well, they didn't want to say what he was referring to. It was a grayish color about 30 to 40 feet away from his X-15 in flight doing a 58-mile high flight on July 17th, 1962. So this is way back when. This is after Roswell.
Oh, so they saw an actual craft, you're saying?
They saw an actual craft, right, that was about 30, 40 feet away, 80 or 58 miles high, right, blasting away in the brand new X-18 or X-15, excuse me, and they see this. So another astronaut, another pilot of the X-15, Joseph A. Walker, on May 11th, 1962, his main mission was not only to fly this new experimental craft, but to also look for UFOs. His main mission was to actually look for this. And that's crazy, because the first mission, they were saying, well, okay, you might have saw something. And the second mission was, go ahead and look for this. We need you to identify if there's something out there.
Well, it seems like someone actually took those sightings seriously.
I mean, somebody had to. It's crazy. And he filmed, Mr. Walker filmed actual UFOs and said there's something out there too. NASA says we are never going to release this information. Ever, ever, ever.
See, and that kind of makes me wonder, everyone talks about the CIA or the dark government or, the FBI not releasing things. Here's NASA, who is really just supposed to be about, space exploration and, these tests, but yet they don't want to disclose information like this.
You ever heard of the person James Lavelle and Frank Bowman?
Who are they?
All right. They were astronauts using the. I think they were in orbit, a record-breaking orbit of 14 days in flight in space. 14 days, which back then was crazy. This was back in 1965.
So were these part of the? Were these guys part of the Apollo missions?
No. They were in the Gemini astronauts, right? These are not part of the Apollo missions, right? But they were. This is leading up to the Apollo missions, right?
Okay.
So during the flight, James Lavelle, he says, and I quote, Lavelle, this is Lavelle, bogey at 10 o'clock high. Houston comes back, say again, 7? Said, we have bogey at 10 o'clock high. So Houston at this point was like, what are he talking about? He's in space, right? Then they question, is that the booster rocket that you're actually seeing? Lavelle replies back, we have several actual sightings. Estimated distance? And then he says, I also see the booster. And that was basically he's saying, the booster is one way, but we have several UFOs in another direction. And he can distinctly see the two.
And that's interesting because right now, when people say that they see UFOs in videos, let's say from the ISS, the first thing that NASA says, oh, that's like debris that's floating around the ISS, and that's why we see what might be UFOs, but it's really just light being reflected.
Yeah. It's one thing for light to be reflected, because in space, everything is floating. Now, when you see the light being reflected and it changes direction suddenly, then you're like, huh, that's not right. You know, and if you ever really notice, though, right, I know for a fact that the astronauts will probably are taking their cell phones up there. They're sneaking their cell phones, right, and they're recording. Why is it that any videotape that we see, right, is always about Earth or anything like that? I know for a fact that they are seeing whatever it is. They're recording it, and the moment that NASA gets wind, it's gone. I'm telling you, there's something after reading all this, I strongly believe that the astronauts are under such a government contract to stay quiet and not say anything, to not create mass panic, that I'm starting to really think, right, as a blue collar who is very skeptical, I'm starting to really think that there is something out there that not only NASA, but the government, they're really trying to hide the truth, which is crazy.
So would you say then these astronauts who are reporting sightings are actually being sworn in at some level as far as keeping things secret?
Well, I put it to you this way. I believe not only are they sworn in, I think they are being threatened, right, as government conspiracy, having what's the term? They will be considered treason with the United States government, and that is punishable by death. I truly believe that they consider it national security, that they need to stay quiet.
Okay, you know what's funny about that is there's no way that people who were in the Gemini and Apollo missions, which were pretty much considered as heroes, would ever be put to death. And I think it's that fear that they put in these individuals that kept them from reporting what they saw.
I mean, if you really think about it, how many people disappear on an everyday basis? Right? Let me not say that the government causes us United States citizens to disappear. I'm not saying that at all. I want to go on record by saying that. What I'm trying to say is that if they threaten you and they have the ability to, wouldn't you be quiet too?
Well, we already see how it is, when people are held to these values and to secrecy and top secret, that they take it to their graves, and they usually wait till at that very last moment to say that they've seen something, which, to be honest, if you wait to that point in time, it has very little value because you're not going to be around to pretty much represent and fight for what you're saying actually happened.
I got an article about Neil Armstrong and Edward Aldrin. Oh, now we all know, everybody, even as a child, as me as a child, I know who Neil Armstrong is. Do you know who Neil Armstrong is?
Absolutely.
He was on the famous Apollo 11. The famous, infamous. I mean, it's crazy. He landed on the moon. It was crazy, right? I have. And I'm going to post this website of where I am getting this information from. Now, on Apollo 11, NASA states, on Apollo 11, recording was, "These babies are huge, sir, enormous. Oh my God."
And he's not just talking about hemorrhoids either.
Oh, I don't think so. He probably pooped his pants. Which, if you think about it, and you're in a spacesuit and you poop your pants, that's the worst thing ever.
It's not pretty.
So he states, "These babies are huge, sir, enormous. Oh my God, you wouldn't believe it. I'm telling you, there are other spacecrafts out there lined up as far as the crater's edge. They're on the moon watching us." This is on Apollo 11.
So you have Gemini and then the Apollo astronauts reporting the same thing.
Correct. Now, there's a professor who wants to remain anonymous because, he probably still with NASA, or he's probably not. I don't know. I don't care. The professor says what really happened out there with Apollo, Armstrong, this is coming from Armstrong, this is his recording of it, it was incredible. Of course, we had always known there was a possibility. The fact is, we are warned off by the aliens. There was never any question then of a space station or a moon city. That's insane.
Well, when you hear things like that, it kind of brings to question why we never just returned to the moon.
I mean, that's it right there. Now he says, how do you mean, the professor, how do you mean warned off? Armstrong replies, I can't go into details except to say that their ships were far superior to ours in both size and technology. Boy, they were big and menacing. No, there is no question of a space station, the professor replies, but NASA had other missions after Apollo 11. Armstrong replies, naturally. NASA was committed at the time and couldn't risk panic on Earth, but it really was a quick scoop and back. So you got to think about it. After Apollo 11, did they really explore the moon anymore?
Sounds like it was shut down.
It was. Now, according to a doctor, I can't even say his name, Ali Kirsinder, whatever, and Buzz Aldrin, they took film from inside their module of the spacecraft. Right? So they have video documented evidence. When they came back, the CIA and NASA shut it down. They held all evidence. Done.
So we're saying we have a documented video from astronauts of actual spaceships that were not from the Earth, but yet they're gone now. The evidence is gone.
No, the evidence is there. It's just that, just because, it's like, how can I put it? There are known knowns and there are known unknowns.
Well, I mean, it's gone from us. We actually never see it, so it's pretty much gone.
It's gone from us. We can never, ever, ever see this because, once again, we're under that mentality of, the CIA does not want us, or the government does not want us to know because they are afraid of our reaction to it, which in many ways I completely understand. I really do. I completely understand that us as a society, even though we've seen crazy stuff every day, right? When you start challenging people's faith and people's way of thinking, they'll go crazy. So it's yay, they did it, and nay, because they're holding us back.
So this really goes hand in hand with what Gary McKinnon was saying. Remember we talked about him. He was the British hacker who hacked into NASA. And the stuff that he was being told regarding those alien bases on the moon, which were being kind of photoshopped by the NASA folks. Right.
And you know what? I completely believe that. Because if you ever think about it, just like, didn't you tell me on an episode that Google now has, kind of like Google Earth, we got Google Moon, that we can see the dark side of the moon?
We actually do. And actually NASA last year sent out images, enhanced images of the dark side of the moon so that everyone can see.
I completely think now that the entire dark side of the moon is photoshopped.
It's very possible. It's very possible.
I think it's completely photoshopped so that we don't see exactly what's on the dark side of the moon. And the crazy thing is, because NASA is its own entity, its own program that has no checks and balances, that we cannot stop them, we need to come up with another program that makes NASA tell the truth.
Well, I think, honestly, I think it's kind of strange that we only get to see one side of the moon.
What do you mean?
I mean, naturally speaking, we only see one side of the moon.
Well, that's because the moon rotates approximately the same speed as it is rotating around the Earth. I kind of know that. I learned that in third grade. How is that? You think that's done on purpose?
No, I'm not saying it's done on purpose, but I'm saying it's quite convenient.
Well, yeah, I mean, um, okay. I mean, naturally, right? From all the stuff that we learned from the moon and how important the moon is, it is kind of weird that we only always see one side of the moon at all times, no matter what. But what kills me is that it took us until 2015 to know what the dark side of the moon looks like. We had so much technology to explore the moon and to see, like a long time ago, I think there was saying, "Oh, there's water on the moon. There was a crater so deep that there could be water on the moon," and we did not really explore that possibility at all. Nothing. We're focusing on all these other things, but what's our natural satellite, our first satellite ever, we just disregard completely. We're focusing on Jupiter. We're focusing on this new planet 9 that could be out there. We're focusing on the many moons that has possible water. But we have completely left the moon alone, which is crazy, especially what I just talked about.
From what I've been reading recently, China is trying to make their way to the moon.
And I think they should. I think they should try to make their way to the moon and completely map it out. Completely go over it. And it might cause something. It might cause a syrup. It might, whatever it is, instead of us going so far that it takes us so long to figure out what's going on, let's explore what we have and what we know now. We still don't know what's in the oceans. We still don't know exactly what's on the moon, right? Let's explore our small little, universe that we know and we could probably reach it very quickly instead of going so far out and trying to discover new planets.
So, how many astronauts altogether that you come across that actually had some kind of a UFO connection?
So, I came across approximately 13. 13 that I came across that was so quick. I had a very convenient website that had clips and documentation of all 13 astronauts and what they said. Now, there's another astronaut. He'll be number 14. And he was on Apollo 14. And I can honestly say that I admire him. Now, he doesn't really come out and say that he saw UFOs. He doesn't say at all. Edgar Mitchell. Edgar Mitchell is awesome.
Now, Edgar Mitchell has actually been an activist when it comes to things like disclosure.
I mean, yeah. I really think, and let me put it to you this way, guys. Edgar Mitchell is not a dumb person by no means. This man is a highly educated man. Like I said, anybody who has more knowledge than me, which is pretty much anybody, but this person right here, I would listen to him talk for hours. If I could sit down and have a conversation with him, I would talk to him for days. He is such a wealth of knowledge. He knows a lot about quantum physics that I just really want to soak in. And he feels that in the universe, there's a universal consciousness when it comes to quantum physics, and that's one of our first senses. It's so beautiful in his way of thinking that I really want to talk to him.
So I just don't understand with these type of, if I guess you can say, these type of discussions with astronauts, and then you have people like in law enforcement and pilots, all these people who are pretty much credible individuals coming forward and talking about UFOs. Why do we continue to get sidetracked by government agencies?
Well, it's a government agency. Their whole theory is to lie. I mean, if you really think about it, everything that they've done, unless it becomes completely irrelevant, that's when they tell the truth. If you look at in the history of government agencies, it is not until the item is no longer irrelevant is when they come forward.
Well, every year we have this idea that this will be the year that disclosure will happen. What do you think?
Absolutely not. The only way and you can quote me on this. Anybody can quote me on this. Today's date. The only way the government agency of the United States will say that we have visited extraterrestrials and been in communication, or whatever the case may be, is if an extraterrestrial lands on Washington, D.C. and say, we want to talk to your president. That is the only way the government is like, oh yeah, that's our cousin. That's their family. It's peace. Don't worry about it.
Well, it seems like it's something that people themselves are going to have to figure out a way to not only capture these UFOs as far as having video and audio evidence, but also find a way to predict or even contact them before anyone else in a government position will come forward and say, hey, this is what we've had, and let's talk about it.
You see, the problem with that is, if you try to do this as an independent individual, all right, let's rationalize this a little bit. If you try to do this as an independent individual and say, hey, I'm going to contact UFOs, and you are smart enough to make an antenna and make a radio wave so that way you actually start to maybe make contact, I guarantee you the government will be at your door within 2 seconds and make you shut it down. What we need to do is get together as a public, as people who technically the government should be scared of us. We shouldn't be scared of the government. We need to come together and unified and find out what's going on. Let's supersede the government and find out what's really going on.
Well, I think that there is a point with all this social media that kind of fear can subside, because 30 years ago I can see it. People were scared the big government's going to come after them, but right now we have social media, so that one person can reach millions.
Well, that's not really true, because look at Snowden. Mr. Snowden he had to leave the country to run away from the government.
It's true, but look at how many people he's reached.
But he had to leave the country, though. You understand? We need somebody who is able to stay in the country and be able to talk freely. We can't just have one individual. We need a group, a society as a whole to get together and say, we need to find out the truth.
Well, I think it's because we're talking about two different things, because Snowden actually, took government secrets. We're talking about people getting together and discovering the UFO phenomenon, not going in and hacking the government.
Okay, you're right. Snowden, what he did was a no-no. Right? I believe he did things kind of the wrong way. He had good intentions, but did it the wrong way.
And even then, when you look at his interviews, he's a little peculiar.
Right. But when you talk about UFOs, you're messing with national security. And you're also messing with CIA. So because of that, we need to definitely get together and not do what Mr. Bissett is doing, which is asking for the truth embargo. I'm tired of that. We cannot ask the government to give us something they are never going to give us. We need to find out ourselves. Let's get together and do it so that way we can say, hey, this is our information. And plus, this is Steve, or this is Bob. He's an alien. He's about 8 foot tall. We need to figure this out.
I guess eventually we'll get to that. Maybe in the near future, maybe not. It might not even be in our generation from what it looks like.
You know what? I think it's going to be in our generation. I'm young. Maybe not yours because you're older. But I'm young enough. It's going to be in my generation. And I'm going to see the government saying, hey, something is really out there. This is proof. This is our proof.
Hey, I've seen your hairline. You're not that young.
Hey, really, sir? Anyway, it's genetic. What I'm saying is that I truly feel that we can get this going. Oh, before we go any further, I do want to say something. I want to give a shout out to Dave on the morning show. I really appreciate you guys. I'm sorry I have not been able to get online and talk to you guys. We will do an interview soon with you guys.
Well, with that said, it looks like we're in our last few minutes of our show. Any final thoughts before we leave the airways for this episode?
Yes, we are going to plan for a live episode. I want everybody, and when we do a live episode, we're going to post a link saying this is going to be live. I want everybody to listen in. And I want everybody there to comment, and whatever you guys say, I'm going to respond back to. Also, please email me. I'm on Gmail, thebigo82@gmail.com. Let me know what your thoughts are.
And for anyone that's interested, we're going to go ahead and post the links to the things that we talked about today. Plus, you'll also find the information to connect to Big O and myself on the description of the podcast, which is episode 9. And we look forward to hearing from you, and we'll catch you next time.
Later.
Welcome to UFO Buster Radio with your hosts, Manny Moonraker and Big O.
UFO Buster Radio here, Manny Moonraker here with my co-host.
Big O.
And Big O, we're going to start the show today with some very sad news, right?
Very sad news.
Maybe it's a good idea for you to share that sad news.
All right. It's sad, but I'm laughing. So Mr. Edgar Mitchell has died in January 4th, 2016. So he died a few days ago. And it's a very sad day because that was one intelligent being, intelligent man, and I appreciate his intelligence.
And it's interesting that we were actually talking about Edgar Mitchell in the last episode.
Yeah, in the last episode, I was once again admiring the type of person he is. I saw a couple of videos, and he impressed me. His intellect and how his view on life was great. So let me do a little biography of Mr. Edgar Mitchell here.
Shoot.
All right, Edgar Mitchell, born September 17th, 1930, died February 4th, 2016. He was a captain in the United States Navy. He was a naval officer, aviation test pilot, and astronautical engineer for NASA. He was at the lunar module of Apollo 14. He was the 6th person to walk on the moon. This man was amazing. He was very inspiring. He was part of many organizations, and I truly feel mankind has lost a good soul.
I think we can pretty much say that Edgar Mitchell was an American hero.
He was, absolutely, without a doubt. You know, we should all have a moment of silence right now on the show for Mr. Mitchell.
And I think we're going to go ahead and do that. So we have a minute of silence in remembrance of Edgar Mitchell.
You will be missed.
So let's continue with the show now. And for our initial portion, I do have some very interesting information. And it kind of comes across some of the things we've talked about in the past about people who study the UFO phenomena, but there aren't too many out there that are using technology the way it should be.
Right. You know, and we're relying on one source only. We're only relying on NASA. And obviously, NASA is in cahoots with the United States government or the CIA or whoever conspiracy theorists you talk to today.
I do have some information that we'll go ahead and put in the description for the show regarding one individual by the name of David Coate, C-O-T-E.
Mr. Coate.
Mr. Coate. So Mr. Coate actually has recently embarked on putting together a CubeSat, which is a very small satellite, into space.
So basically what we're doing is we're privatizing. Well, it's already privatized, but we're getting out of relying on NASA. So this is great. We need more people like Mr. Coate to shoot up some satellites and some satellites that's able to take great images or whatever we need to do and make it public, non-restrictive.
The satellite that he's putting together to go up into what they call low orbit is actually going to be able to take 360-degree pictures, and it's also going to be reading radiation. What he's looking to do is basically map these things together and maybe even capture some images or strange fluctuations in radiation that could be part of the UFO phenomena.
That would be interesting. 360, but that's going to be confusing. 360-degree photo. I guess he's going to put a whole bunch of GoPro cameras. Advertisement for GoPro right there.
Well, what's happening right now is that initially the effort was placed on Indiegogo, and it got to $16,641 from backers. Now, for the project, he needs $50,000. Now, the $50,000 will cover the satellite and launching it into low orbit.
That's crazy. Because if you think of how much NASA spends on a pen that could write upside down, you would think we could launch this for $50,000.
Well, what really is kind of strange, I guess, is that $16,000 was only raised by 137 people. Now, there's probably over 137 podcasts that have to do with the UFO phenomenon by itself.
That's true.
And there's probably several millions of people just in the U.S. who could probably donate $5, $10 each and get this done.
So basically what we're saying is, everybody look this guy up. If you feel like he's ready and that he is capable to build this awesome low orbit satellite and be non-restrictive with the truth, donate $5.
It really is something we should all get in on. So the good thing is the Indiegogo crowdfunding has actually stopped. But he moved the effort over to Kickstarter. So in Kickstarter, there's 33 more days to go. He's up to $2,400 and 24 backers. So it looks like this is something that anyone that believes in the UFO phenomena should really get into it.
If Stephen Bassett could get $50,000 to send videos to Congress, which has done absolutely nothing, we can help this guy out. I mean, really. He's actually doing something. Stephen Bassett is not doing anything.
Even if anyone out there is interested in looking into these CubeSat satellites, the company that's going to be shooting this into low orbit is called Interorbital Systems, and we'll have the link in the description. And they actually offer the kits. If you've got 50 G's, you can get a kit together, design your CubeSat to capture whatever information you want, and they'll shoot it up there for you.
And how much clearer those pictures would be with a super high resolution cameras and there's no atmospheric distortion, anything like that. So those pictures that we will be seeing from that little low orbiting satellite will be so crystal clear. I mean, even if it's just not UFOs, if you really think about it, just having more eyes out there, it will look so much clearer than having a telescope down here on Earth looking up.
Yeah, I think it's just still amazing to me that with all this ufology talk and all this UFO talk, that no one else has jumped into this type of technology to really answer the questions, because we keep on hearing these stories that NASA is, going in and taking pictures and touching them up to remove things like UFOs.
Hey. That's part of my ozone. Why are you turning the subject for?
We already talked about that before, a couple episodes ago.
I'm just saying, just let it go.
So anyway, instead of relying on these images from NASA that people keep saying they're being touched up, it's something that we, as the regular blue-collar person, can get into and get the answers ourselves.
I mean, everybody, if you want to do something that's lasting for humankind, $5, really, to donate to the situation and to donate for this little satellite to help expose the truth. That's really insignificant, and you could be part of something huge.
And I just want to say, just a little disclosure, we don't know Mr. David Coate, and we're not trying to make any kind of money of this. He didn't reach out to us. We just came across the story in Popular Mechanics, no less, and we decided it's something that we should let our listeners know about because they might be interested.
Yeah, we're like I said, the whole purpose of this show is to bring out the truth, and this is a person who's on the same side as us, so we want to give him the benefit of the doubt and make sure that he is successful. You're right, we're not getting I wish, I mean, that would be awesome if we did get a piece of that 50 grand, but we're not.
Well,
in the car.
It sounds like we're ready for our next subject in the ozone.
Big O! It's showtime!
So what you got in the ozone for us today?
And, it's one of those situations where you look up one subject and you just don't even realize how massive the subject is until you look into it. So I wanted to look at the moon. Last episode we kind of briefly talked about it with the Apollo missions and stuff like that, and I wanted to continue that ongoing stuff and keep talking about the Apollo missions. Now, I was wrong at one point saying that on Apollo 11 was the only time NASA actually had somebody on the moon. That's not true. I'm sorry, but depending on what conspiracy theorists you talk to, we've never landed on the moon. One of the things I wanted to talk about is we found, there are signs of all kinds of structures on the far side of the moon. And it's crazy that how detailed these structures are, and it's not even to the point where you're looking at the structure and it's just one or two things and you're like, oh, that could be shadowing or stuff like that. No, I mean, they found structures that smoke is coming out of it, or a type of gas on,
kind of like a smokestack.
Yes, like a vent or a smokestack, And if you think about it, why would aliens, why would ET want to mine, or especially mine? Why would they do something like that to the moon?
One theory is that they're trying to stay warm because it is the dark side of the moon.
Okay, you're right. That's a good theory. But here's the other theory. What if they're using it for a fuel source? So, on Earth, there's a material, He3, that can be used as a nuclear fuel source. Alright, on Earth, there's approximately 15 tons of it. Well, on the moon, there's approximately 5 million tons of this stuff. It's everywhere. Everywhere.
So it kind of makes you wonder, why is it that no one else has returned to the moon?
Right. Ever since the Apollo missions, we stopped ever since the last Apollo mission, which was Apollo 17, supposedly, right? We stopped going to the moon. Now, there have been, other people like China wanting to go to the moon as well, and they are still in the process of, but they stopped since the last Apollo mission. Everybody pretty much stopped really looking at the moon, and it's crazy. Now, there's a man, he wrote a book called ULOs, Alan Sturm. And now his initial idea for this book was, I'm going to look for these sites that NASA went to with his high-power telescope and take pictures. And so on one page, there will be his picture of a historical site, and on the next page will be NASA's, documentation pictures, archive picture. And he started to notice some crazy things, right? He started to notice structures were in the same area in NASA's archives. It was very blurred, right? Some main structures like Kepler crater on the moon. Okay. So on NASA's archive, it looks like a regular crater. It really does. In Alan's book, with his picture, it looks like a crater that's been mined.
So how did he get a picture of the dark side of the moon?
That I don't know. Well, this is not the dark side of the moon, actually. No. Kepler was not on the dark side of the moon. Kepler was still on our side of the moon, but just at a different angle, I'm assuming. Like, we can still see Kepler. It makes you wonder, if they're mining and if they're going forward and they're finding stuff, does it make it into is this really a threat? I mean, they found so many things. For example, on the Apollo 14 mission, where Mr. Edgar Mitchell was on, they was sort of like a flyby on the dark side of the moon, and they recorded it. Now, on this flyby inside the crater of the moon, there was supposedly 5 domes with light in it, emitting light. So by the time they came back to Earth, and then they gave this information, they video and they showed this, recording, right? The very next day, when they showed the same recording, that part was completely edited out. Completely. Now, one of the astronauts who was there grabbed the film and looked, and there was no splices, no mismatch of the tape, nothing. Which means within less than 24 hours, these guys actually cut, spliced, and remade an entire different film.
Well, here's my only thing with that is, at this point, there shouldn't be any questions about what people can see on the moon.
I think so too. I mean, it's crazy. But it just seems like 90% of the information that we're getting from the moon is from NASA. And if they're doctoring up everything that we get, then how are we able to actually see what's on the moon? There's a person that actually was a part of the truth embargo. Donna Hare. She was a former NASA contractor. And she observed, and she's on YouTube. You can look her up. Donna Hare. She's on YouTube stating the fact that, I was working next to one of the employees of NASA, and we saw a UFO in low orbit through one of our satellites. And what he did was made it go away. He airbrushed it out. And then she asked, was that a UFO? And he just looked at her and said, I can't tell you what it is or what it's not. But he smiled and kept on doing his work. So that's crazy that we're finding all this evidence of ETs from NASA, and it almost, does it really confirm the fact that they just ignore or don't want the public to know about UFOs?
Well, I mean, what he said to her really was the definition of UFO. He really couldn't tell what it was.
Right, but still, it's not just one case. The fact that it's one thing to have a UFO, right? But you leave that in the picture because it is a UFO. It's another case to airbrush it out on purpose, so that way the public doesn't see it.
Well, the unknown always has some kind of conspiracy linked to it.
I just don't even get it. Now, it's one of those things that NASA always tries to downplay everything. Always, always, always. Phobos. You ever heard of Phobos? Phobos was Phobos 1 and Phobos 2 was launched by the Russian government way back when. Now, Phobos 1 and Phobos 2, that government program was in 1989. Now, both Phobos 1 and Phobos 2 was unfortunately destroyed. Now, the government did release at one point saying that a large cylindrical sphere or needle type object destroyed both satellites.
And this is the Russian government, right?
This is the Russian government, right? And all kinds of stuff happens to them. Like, we see all kinds of stuff happens to the Russians. I don't know why. But they're saying, something happened. Our satellites were working perfectly. And then something attacked it. And there were photos on Phobos 2 just before it went offline that there was a large cylinder or needle type object about 27 kilometers in length. Giant. Massive. Okay? And then they claim that it rammed it. So fast forwarding to, I'm going to Mars because this is part of the whole NASA cover-up thing. So fast forwarding to the little rover Curiosity on Mars, back in 2014, it happens to catch a large needle-like object in the background. And this thing was ginormous. It was huge. And it stayed within view for about 10 minutes and then flew off. Now, NASA's excuse, of course, NASA's going to have an excuse. They say, well, at that point in time, we was having trouble with the shutter system. And the shutter was exposing the camera too long and blah, 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 blah. Well, upon other experts' review of the film, they're saying, no, the shutter was working just fine. That's a lie.
Well, and that's another subject where in Mars, you're constantly having people who go in and look at the photos from the Curiosity rover, and they're finding all kinds of things. Now, is that something that we're just imagining, or is it just familiar to us, and so we're just assuming that there's things there?
Well, it's one of those situations that, are we being too hopeful? I mean, you're absolutely right. Are we being too hopeful that the moment we see something, we're automatically jumping on it and say, oh, this is that? Just like with the claw or with the skeletal remains, there's so many things. But when you're having things, it's almost like history repeating itself. And it becomes, instead of it being a one-time deal of it being a coincidence, when you're seeing the same type of object over and over, does it stop being a coincidence? I think so. I think not only does it stop being a coincidence, we need to investigate. We need to, just like this person throwing up the low orbiting satellite, we need to help him so that way we can stop getting away from NASA and the government programs and being a self-program and just doing it for ourselves, for mankind.
Well, it's going to take some really deep pockets to try to go anywhere other than low orbit. But even with the low orbit, that should give us plenty of information as far as actually seeing UFOs. And do they coincide with reports that we have on the Earth?
Yeah. It would be cool if we have not only a couple, not just one, a couple of low orbits and a couple surrounding the moon. I mean, the moon is our closest satellite. The moon is our first natural satellite. It's so close to us, and yet we still don't know so much. Heck, Google Moon is fake. Let's throw that out there because they get their information from NASA. right? So everything about the far side of the moon, I'm convinced now that it's completely fake. It's airbrushed. It's just, there's no point. You're not going to find anything. If you look up and you do your standard lookups and do whatever you can to do to look up anything, I truly feel that NASA is just hiding everything because they don't want to create mass hysteria.
Well, it's one of those things, right, where we really have to get down to, as they say, brass tacks, get that money together, get some crowdfunding just like David Coate is doing, and let's send something to the moon.
I don't want to send anybody to the moon, but I do definitely want to, get something out there. They even found, and that was crazy, they even found what looked like rovers, not made by us, on the moon. And that's insane. They, on the moon, there's no atmosphere. Obviously, there's nothing on the moon that would create an atmosphere. So if you have a footprint on the moon, that footprint will last for hundreds of years, unless there's an asteroid that will hit the moon and spread dust debris around. So what they found was two objects that looked like rovers, and they found tracks behind it as if it was moving, right? And it's one thing to find tracks. Okay, maybe it was a miniature asteroid, whatever. But these tracks would go in and out of a crater. So it was obviously moving. That's a smoking gun right there.
Well, again, it's another conspiracy theory because number one, we don't really know how many times we've sent things to the moon or any other country for that matter.
When they look at everything, you're right. It's just we don't know. It could be secret missions to the moon that we don't know about. Just like the supposed, Apollo 20 that was there that we never knew about. That they actually found an alien and brought it back inside the shuttle and all that crazy stuff. So it's this conspiracy, and it's funny because it could be a conspiracy within a conspiracy, right? You're right. We never made it to the moon, but if we make enough rumors about making it to the moon, like seeing alien structures and stuff like that, that would prove that we made it to the moon. It's the double conspiracy. You just never know.
So I guess the question really is, can we somehow debunk the information that's misleading people into thinking that there isn't anything on the moon?
That there isn't or is?
That there isn't.
Well, it's almost as bad as paranormal activity at this point. I mean, can you really debunk that there's ghosts? But, it's like, can you really debunk a religion? Anything that has, there's no real solid evidence that there is or is not. So it's always that paradox. Until we can do that, which will take millions of dollars, and supersede NASA and supersede our governments, I don't think we'd be able to do it.
So was there any other huge secrets we need to know about on the moon?
I think the moon is a huge secret in itself. There's so much information on the moon, right, that I can literally talk about this for days. I am tired. Every time I think I'm done, I'm done. I could go ahead and click on this next page and it's going to be the same information. Nope. Something completely different. Everything from bridges to colonies to, stuff on the dark side of the moon, on all of the Apollo missions when they did low flybys, that they seen towers. They're seeing not only towers, but silos for nuclear plants, to castle walls, to a pipe extending through a crater, and then continuing. You can almost see the pipe continuing through on somewhat underground under the moon and out of a cliff. It's just, there's so much information that it's so hard for me to tell you, nope, we just got this one thing.
And you know what? As being anyone that's a novice and looking at all this information would think that the world's coming to an end because there's just crazy things happening on the moon.
It's not only that, it's almost overwhelming. It really is. It's so overwhelming because I'm a novice. I'm complete novice. It is completely overwhelming. As much information, and it really looks like they're planning something. There's something going on. They're staging up, and that is crazy.
So we're going to be invaded from the moon.
Well, isn't that like the perfect spot? If you really think about it, there's not that many satellites that's looking back at the moon, on the dark side of the moon. It's always facing away from us. You could stage up, you could approach Earth from behind the moon, and we will never see it until the very last minute, and it's over. I mean, it's the perfect strategical spot.
Well, I think that if I was part of a group like a Star Trek group, and I had a prime directive to not interfere with the inhabitants of a planet, that would be the perfect place for me to hide out.
It is. I mean, it is the perfect place. I mean, the only other two places I would think would be just as good as it would be our polars, the North and South Pole.
Well, even there's conspiracies because they're saying there's crashed UFOs there.
Right. You see, and there, you can almost see that. Because not many people are there. No, not many people go there. There's not even that many satellites that's, focusing on our polar regions. So it's just, and then you have the supposed HARP system, which shoots microwaves in the air. That's in Alaska, or I think it's in Alaska. That could cause all kinds of stuff. So it probably interfere with the spaceships. I don't know. There's so many things out there. It's hard to focus on one thing.
So I guess what's the answer? What do we do as blue-collar folks?
As blue-collar folks, we need to, once again, I keep saying this, let go of what the government is not telling us, because they're never going to tell us. We need to all band together and actually figure it out ourselves, because NASA's not going to help us at all. They're funded by the government. And they're funded by different government agencies. So unless you are able to pay NASA and pay their commissions, we're not going to get any information. They're not going to try to create any mass hysteria, in their opinion. So we need to just supersede and go ahead and go and find out and find people like Mr. Coates, who are building, satellites for 10 times cheaper and able to get the information out there so everybody can see.
Yeah, we just need 10,000 people to give $5 a piece so that we can know what's really going on.
It'll be awesome if we had 10,000 listens.
And with that said, I think we also need to get the word out. We want people to share our show so that we can continue to grow and reach a larger audience.
I think so. I want to spread the truth, but it's hard to spread the truth and nobody listens. So if you feel like we're onto something, spread it. Tell your neighbor, tell your kid, tell somebody, tell a dog. You never know, a dog might accidentally hit our show a couple of times.
And listen, I'm not, I really would like for everyone who's listening just to share our show, Facebook, Twitter, Google+, whatever you do. It'll be better for us to better serve the cause if we can get a larger audience. And who knows, maybe in the future, we'll be able to get one of these CubeSats together and shoot it up.
Oh, that would be awesome.
So that all our listeners could have access to that information.
I mean, even if it's just the audio, well, no. Let's do something better than what Mr. Coates is doing. Let's shoot for the moon. He's shooting for low orbit. We're shooting for the moon. So if we get enough listeners, I'm going to tell you right now, we're going to shoot for the moon.
Well, you have to go there. There's no way we're going to shoot for the moon.
We're going to shoot for the moon.
Oh, they only do low orbit.
You know what? We need to find somebody who can. No, forget NASA. I'm pretty sure the Russian government needs help with money. We supersede our government. We're going to shoot for the moon. My goal. Leave my goal alone.
Okay, so anyway, we are in our last 10 minutes. Any last words for the crew?
Well, the last word is, my goal is to shoot for the moon. I don't know about Manny. Even though his name is Manny Moonraker, he doesn't want to go for the moon. I, Big O, want to go for the moon and figure out what's really going on. I want everybody to spread the word so that way we can do our own little Kickstarter and go for the moon.
Manny Moonraker has his own moon, so he doesn't need to go to someone else's.
Whatever.
So anyway, before we leave, we want to make sure that everyone takes the opportunity to visit bosscrawler.com, and they are a job search website and one of our sponsors. And we look forward to our next episode and really reaching our listeners, the blue-collar ufologists.
Hey. So, from Big O and Manny, we see you next time.
Thank you all for listening. Ciao. Hey, I stole that from Dave.